wasn't that written by one of the first lifeguards ever?
Yes.
It was a Greek way back in 2500 BC.
Yeah.
And when no one knew how to swim.
That's right.
I think it was the great Cyclonophes. He developed the long stick. He would hook people and pull them in.
Yeah.
And you know what? Not many people know this. That is how the first fishing rod came about. Put his lunch on the end of the long stick. He caught a fish and he pulled it in with the long stick.
Lunch was gone.
That was the first fishing pole.
That's right.
And people don't know about this, but so that was Sophocles. And he wrote a book.
And
that's the book
in
I read.
2500 BC.
It's a little out of date.
Yeah.
And he said, in order to survive drowning, stay close to shore.
But that would help us now.
No, it wasn't a long book either.
No, it was only a page long. It wasn't really a book.
It did have some nice diagrams.
It was more of a pamphlet, wasn't it?
Yeah, and he liked to brag a lot about his long stick.
Yeah.
And then people weren't sure if he was bragging about his member or his long...
Member, another euphemism.
He was trying to be funny, and it did get the best sellers, in Athens for about 2 days. And then I think some Goths took him. They were always on the rampage, and they wanted to know... What do you do when you're on the run and you come to a shoreline and they didn't have boats?
Right, they didn't know how to swim either, right?
No, and they said, show us how to get the fish out of the water.
Right.
And they thought he was a genius because he came up with a long stick.
Right.
And so then they kidnapped him and he had to show them.
Right.
And they took all the credit.
Didn't they at one point update the design of the fishing rod? You can't hold a 100-meter stick.
No.
Right?
Well, you could with some supports. And that was also attempted by Sophocles' neighbor.
Yeah, but then
he was always imitating everything.
Well, he was such a copycat.
He was. He wasn't
what was his name? What was his name?
Oh, his name...
He had a simpler name, didn't he?
Yeah, his name was Bronze. He just named himself after a hunk of metal. Bronze, he was always imitating everything Sophocles would do.
Yeah.
And so he was so unoriginal that he said, well, if Sophocles makes a long stick, I'll make a longer stick. And he was one of the first fishermen to get dragged into the ocean. People said, what's he doing? I don't know. And Sophocles said, he's slapping his arms on the water and he's not sinking. And people thought, how is he not sinking?
Right.
He's doing something.
He's doing something, right.
And that's when swimming was invented.
Right.
It's ironic that because he sank like a stone after he got exhausted.
Yeah, because he was bronze.
And even more wrong, Sophocles hooked him with his long stick and dragged him in. He just wanted to give him a good talking to for imitating everything he does.
Right. Well, he was well respected as Sophocles. Bronze, he was kind of a pariah in Greek society, wasn't he?
Yeah, he stole everybody's ideas.
Well, and he wasn't liked for that.
He copied all of Plato's works.
Right.
And put his name on it.
But the thing was, he just crossed out Plato and wrote his name. And everybody knew.
And he put bronze on it. He put bigger block letters and thought no one. He made the P like a B.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was one of the worst plagiarists.
Right.
He's quite known throughout the years by plagiarists who were very good.
Yeah.
And they would always use that as an insult and said, you got to be kidding me. What are you doing, a bronze?
But I want to know more about the fishing rod. Because today's fishing rod has line. That happened. Wasn't that Archimedes?
Little known is that he had a hobby and it was just collecting string. And Sophocles said, let's go long sticking. Okay, but he said, well, I'll bring my string with me because, I might find some string.
Right.
And
I'll add it to the ball. It's like the biggest ball of string.
It was his favorite hobby. It really relaxed him.
But didn't he pull the long rod out and it got on a piece of a string? And the string unraveled?
Well, it was Socrates hooped a passing marlin, and he was getting dragged out into the water. His toga got wrapped at the end of the stick, and he got pulled in. Well, Archimedes didn't know what the hell to do, because he just didn't know what to do. And out of just blind panic, he threw his ball of string out at Socrates.
But he held on to one end, right? Didn't he hold on to one end?
It unraveled in the water,
right.
And Socrates got all tangled up in the string.
Right.
And then he was able to pull
the string
in with Socrates.
Right.
And even the marlin got tangled up in the string. And it was just all mess.
Yeah.
And so then anyways, they dragged in Socrates and Archimedes, all tangled in the string. And they were able to untangle them, but they couldn't untangle the string from the big stick.
So the big stick kept that string tangled to it. And then someone added little tiny hoops.
Yeah, it was hard to catch a fish with a hoop.
Well, because they just swim right through the hoop.
Yeah, exactly. For the next 500 years, fishermen were trying to catch fish with hoops in Greece. I think the Inuit figured it out.
Yeah,
no one listened to
them. They were very smart.
No one listened to them.
like the Neanderthals. The Neanderthals didn't have a good, solid understanding of macroeconomics.
No, but the Neanderthals were not as stupid as the Homo Sapiens made them out to be.
They were jealous because they were getting all the date?
Oh yeah, the Neanderthal men and women were much better looking than Homo Sapiens. I think the Homo Sapiens just said they were stupid because they were jealous.
Its root is from the Latin. Homo means milk, and sapien means know, so it's to know milk.
The Neanderthals had milk delivery service, and quite ingeniously, they used
rats. They used rats to deliver the milk.
They weren't the brown European brown rat. They were the bigger rodents of the day. Yeah, they were the size of leopards.
But small leopards?
Well, your regular leopard, the leopard of the day. Well, I guess the leopards were a little bigger then too, weren't they? Everything was bigger in those days. Now, of course, the Neanderthals were bigger because they had a more readily available way of drinking milk. And they knew that milk was a great
growth stimulant.
Yeah, growth stimulant. And of course, these cows, they weren't domesticated. Oh yeah, the Homo sapiens, some of them would be dragged, 50 yards sucking on a cow tat, over rocks. It was hard hunting a woolly mammoth. Try getting milk from a pissed off, wild, prehistoric cow.
But in the end, the Neanderthals lost out.
They did, yeah. I think the Homo sapiens are just nasty. I think they moved in on their territory, especially in the milk industry. And just like the United States is trying to move in on the Canadian milk industry, the Homo sapiens, they moved in the Neanderthal industry.
So Canada is the Neanderthals of the 20th century relationship between U.S. and Canada then? And U.S. are the Homo sapien?
Yeah, that's true. Well, that was part of my thesis. I got a small medal at United Nations for that insight. I almost got the Nobel Peace Prize for Economics. My award is called the Lesser Known Economic Award.
The LKEA?
Well, that's right. To those in the know, it's known as the LKEA Award.
Where does Mexico fit into the social bang?
Mexico?
If USA is a Homo sapiens and Canada is the Neanderthals.
No, that's right. Well, I guess they'd be Cro-magnons.
What would China be? Peking Man?
Yes, Peking Man.
A lot of people think Peking Man is from the city Peking, but it's actually from Peking.
Yes, that's also not as well known, except for, of course, amongst astute philosophers such as myself and yourself. The Neanderthals and Homo sapiens, they didn't like the Peking Man at all.
Remember Peeping Man? There was Peking Man and Peeping Man.
Yeah, well, that was the guy he would pretend he's a bird. Yeah, he'd hide in the bushes and peep. People would throw him breadcrumbs because they thought he was a bird. It's one of the first recorded incidences of clandestine begging.
Well, there was a whole religion started around the Peeping Man.
Yes, congregations developed, and they were known as the Peeping Clans. Everyone thought they were feeding birds hiding in bushes. But in fact, they were peeping men hiding in bushes, imitating small birds. People were pissed off, and unfortunately, the Peking men got associated with the peeping men just because they lived in the same vicinity. And then I think the Neanderthals and the Homo sapiens got together and they gathered all the Pekings and the peepings and threw them into the bog.
Oh, the bog, yeah, and they became peaked, right?
Yeah, they became peaked. Well, that's why you find so many Peking and peeping people in the bogs. And they say, how did the Peking man get in here? Well, he was thrown in there probably by an angry Neanderthal. Not many people believe our theories,
We have concluded our broadcast schedule for today. Good night.
The invention of the oxygen tank is quite interesting. That was developed in the Ukraine.
I don't think it'll do with the. It's not like the Hague.
Well, the Ukraine was a person, but they called him the Ukraine because he was so formidable.
You're right.
And his whole thing, they'd have competitions. People would push large boulders and lift large things and lift a piece of plywood with 10 people on it over your head. And it was a big festival. They didn't have television.
No, it was all festivals.
The Ukraine, his thing was they would throw him into the pool, lay him down, and he would stay underwater longer than anyone.
Right.
Other people would try to beat his records.
But they couldn't do it.
They would drown.
But they found out.
The Ukraine had hidden things down in the bottom of the lake. He had a big gourd.
He would
use that with oxygen.
Right, he would turn it upside down and there'd be air in it.
Air in it, yes. And he also had overturned fruit basket. He could come up and underneath and stick his head.
There's a little pocket of air,
pockets.
I mean, you couldn't do that indefinitely.
But it was a while longer than anybody could without it. And then he started drawing different experiments. Took a big barrel and he corked it and he strapped that to his back and he leapt into the water.
It was hard for him to get under though because he's got this big buoyant object on his back.
I know, and that's when the Ukraine drowned. That was the end of his career. Yeah, he didn't do too much after that.
I don't understand why the big barrel would cause him to drown.
Because of the buoyancy, he flipped sideways.
Oh, I see.
He had it strapped to his back with
so he was face down in the water.
With a pig intestine that he had put into the cork
to lead to his mouth. He used it as a snorkel.
He was going to breathe the oxygen out of the barrel.
Something happened to the pig intestine.
Yeah, well,
it get clogged
seagulls came and ate it. That was kind of like Icarus, flying too close to the sun.
Yeah, he was swimming too close to the surface of the water.
The Icarus thing, of course, was written by another plagiarizer. It was Bronze's fifth cousin. And the Ukraine, he was revived.
Oh, that was one of the first examples of being revived.
Pushing on someone's chest.
CPR, yeah.
So they dragged the Ukraine in, and he was, his lungs were full of water.
Yeah.
Then someone tried to take his oak barrel, because they were a precious commodity. There wasn't a lot
of oak. It was the Inuit that started the oak trade back in 2500 BC. Before the Ice Age went away.
Before that, they had all the oak. Yes, and so Ukraine, the oak barrels were dire. They were very expensive. So someone tried to steal it from the Ukraine. But the Ukraine had attached itself to the oak barrel to such a degree that they threw the whole thing on the cart and brought him home.
Right.
And then they put him in the kitchen for the next morning because they got so exhausted carrying him around. But they put him down on his belly on the floor with the barrel on top of him.
Right.
And it pressed all the water out of his lungs.
Right, because they saved him inadvertently. That's how the YMCA started, I believe. Swimming lessons. That whole thing about getting someone's water out of their lungs.
One of the first exercise gyms, the way you would lose weight and get in shape was to tie an oak barrel on it, and they'd throw you in the water and see how long you could last, and then drag you home, and then let you rest all evening with the barrel on your back. So the Ukraine, he revived and immediately decided that he was onto something. He was undeterred.
Right.
He felt that since the great gods had allowed him to be revived, thought the great gods
he thought it was Zeus and Hercules and Mars and Jupiter. All the gods back in those days, all the gods were mixed together, like the Roman god, the Greek gods, the Christian god.
There was Bart.
Bart.
The lesser known god. He was the god of invention and copyright. But now Mr. Ukraine, then he made his next thing was a big clay flower pot sealed at both ends. It was kind of fragile. And so then he finally got onto the idea.
What did the flower pot that was sealed at both ends do?
See, he just couldn't get his head around that fill something with air and take it down with him would never be enough.
Right.
I mean, our air tanks are compressed, and he didn't know how to compress air.
Well, back then they didn't. They didn't have any air pumps.
And then he started doing measurements that he would breathe. And he said, I want to stay under water for half an hour.
Right.
So he would breathe, and he determined that he needed basically the small hull of a ship full of air. So he built a boat, the hull, like a big lifeboat. He enclosed the top of it.
Right.
And he put an air hose into the boat. And then he went down.
Right.
And he was amazed. It worked. That was it. But of course, it wasn't because there was air in the lifeboat. It's just because he had an air tube floating above him, taking the oxygen from the immense atmosphere. But he didn't even know this. For many years, you could see where the Ukraine was in the lake because you'd see him pulling his rowboat, his boat around with him, and he'd be walking on the bottom with big rocks on his feet. And the whole time, he thinks it's the goddamn boat.
Right.
You see, and all these things were invented by accident.
Right.
So maybe we'll invent something by accident. Yeah, I think that instead of lunch, we're going to be lunch.
We have concluded our broadcast schedule for today. Good night.